Game sequels are an interesting thing. Usually, people just want more of the first game, maybe with some refined gameplay or additional mechanics. Narratively, of course, you would hope for an expanded world and characters, continuing the story of the previous game in a fulfilling way. RPGs, more than any other genre of game, seem to struggle the most when it comes to game sequels. Some series, like Final Fantasy, are completely disconnected, bringing new worlds, characters, stories, even gameplay mechanics with each new game. Others, like Pokemon, just copy and paste the last game, change the name of the towns, and that's it. Ni No Kuni 2 went for the Final Fantasy Light approach, telling an entirely new story with new characters, but sort of keeping the first game's world intact. Gone are the Pokemon of the first game, replaced by action RPG combat instead. So was the Switch worth it, or should the game have stayed in its old ways? Let's talk about it. Ni No Kuni 2 starts off with a bang. Literally. You play as Roland, the President of the United States, who witnesses what appears to be New York City getting nuked. It gets absolutely destroyed. It gets destroyed more than the like button when you like the video. He then wakes up in Ding Dong Dell, which was the central town of the first game. And he seems to be trapped there. Unlike the first game, you can't move freely between the two worlds. Roland is quickly caught up in a coup that is taking place, deposing young King Evan. After helping Evan escape, Roland immediately pledges allegiance to him and his plan to make a new kingdom and then make a peace alliance with all the other kingdoms in the world. New York City getting nuked never is talked about for the rest of the game until literally the final boss, and even then it's only hinted at. Roland never shows any sadness that his country was attacked, that people died. He seems to be in no rush to try and get back or to try and help. Instead, he just seems completely content to exist in this new world that he was magically transported to, asking no questions, showing no surprise, not even seeming to care about this change in situation. The storytelling here is horrible, which is such a shame because the beginning does actually hook you pretty well, but after the first hour or so, the narrative can't sustain itself. And it's unfortunate because that was one of the strengths of the first game. But in this one, the story is so paint by numbers. Each chapter sees you venturing to a new realm whose leader has had their mind twisted by the real secret bad guy of the game. So then you bumble about the city, usually a dungeon, and eventually you will fight that nation's kingmaker, a giant monster creature that protects the nation and shares a bond with its leader. None of these cities' stories are very engaging, and on top of this, the game never really seems to connect it out to a larger plot. On top of all this, the game itself is very underdeveloped, especially when you compare it to the first one. There's very minimal voice acting, the towns and characters all feel bland and generic. I think this game honestly looks worse than the first one, despite coming out years later on a later generation of hardware. There's this skirmish mode, which I'll talk about in a bit, and in that, the character text would leave the screen before any normal person could have possibly read it. I read pretty fast, I like to think, and I was having trouble keeping up. The game also takes a lot of steps back from an overall flow and gameplay perspective. In my review of the first game, I actually praised it for how it handled side quests. They don't give you experience, and instead are just there for you to enjoy at your own pace. Do as many or as few as you want. Here, however, there are countless tedious side quests, yet again, but this time they are required. I did what I thought was a solid number of the side quests, and was still severely underleveled by the late game. I was level 50, fighting level 70 enemies. Now, luckily, the scaling is fairly linear, so you're still able to do damage, and while you do take a hefty amount of damage, you can mostly keep up, and I was able to keep up with the game. Because if I wasn't, I would not have finished this game. I would not have put in the time to grind all these side quests just to finish this game. It was that unengaging. Another departure from the first game is the combat, moving into full-action, real-time combat, compared to the first game's pseudo-turn-based approach. You still only control one member of your party directly. However, they did seem to figure out the AI problems that I had with the first game. Your teammates are capable of taking care of themselves for the most part. Combat's fairly basic. You have normal and strong attacks, as well as 4 abilities that you can use. They try to add some complexity by letting you bring 3 weapons into battle. You can switch between them on the fly, and as you do, you will charge them up. So if you get one to 100%, then you use an ability with it, and the ability does more damage and is stronger and things like that. That's cool in theory, but ultimately the game still just devolves into do a button mashy combo, at the end of it, use an ability. You get some pretty strong AoE abilities that can just wipe most enemies. And that's it, rinse and repeat. So overall the combat felt pretty boring and clunky. Once you get the hang of it, I mean, it's fine, but it's nothing special, nothing to write home about. Now, on top of standard combat, you also have the nation building side of the game. As you progress through the story, you are building this new nation, and you collect new people. They want to come and live with you, and you build your town up, and it has different city centers and buildings, and you can send those people to man those buildings to either conduct research for you or to get items for you. I found this part of the game pretty fun. It's, again, simple. It feels a lot like a mobile game. You're just kind of idling and waiting to collect money that you can then spend to upgrade your kingdom. But it's got that nice little conveyor belt of get some gold, upgrade a building, start some research, get some items. It's a nice little treadmill to keep running on while you're spinning your wheels with the story. There are also skirmishes that you can engage in, which see you taking control of your nation's army out on the field. This is more of like an RTS kind of mode, and it also feels very underdeveloped and tacked on. But of course you can't ignore it. You get to the final part of the game, after ignoring it for the whole narrative, and you find out that, of course, there's a skirmish that you have to do to get to the final boss. It's unavoidable. And you need to make sure your armies are level 25. Now, luckily, leveling through skirmishes is pretty quick. It only took me a few skirmishes before I was up to that level. However, the skirmishes themselves are very poorly balanced, and none of them are fun. There's one skirmish even where you're supposed to catch this bad guy that's running away from you. He seriously just no-clip sprinted to the exit every time. I tried like 8 times, I googled it. Everybody was having this problem. It just seems to be a known issue with this skirmish that has not been fixed since this game originally released. Again, I don't know. Do the developers just not care? They seemed to care a lot in the first game. The first game was so lovingly put together, and this one just feels like a mess. It just feels like a complete and total mess. The only reason I was able to complete that skirmish is because the guy just happened to get trapped on the terrain as he was running away from me. So I was able to catch up to him and kill him. It is such a shame, because I really enjoyed the first game so much. But I really do think the best word to describe this entire game is underdeveloped. Every aspect of the game felt like a cash-in rather than a genuine effort. Which is, again, so disappointing, given how lovingly crafted the first game felt. None of those feelings arise during the sequel. Instead, I was usually left frustrated by the game's story, mechanics, and gameplay. I was really surprised by this game, because usually sentiment is much better for it online compared to the first. And I don't know how that's possible. Yes, the combat is less frustrating because of the AI, but that doesn't outweigh the rest of this game's flaws, and it definitely doesn't outweigh all of the first game's positives. Yeah, I guess if you prefer action combat, then you're gonna like this game a little more, but really, the difference in combat is all this game has going for it, and even then there's like so many better games that do this kind of combat that I'm not sure why this would be the one that you wanted to attach yourself to. For a final score, I would give the gameplay a 2 out of 5, the presentation a 2 out of 5, the story a 1 out of 5, for an overall rating of a 2 out of 5 with a value to just pass on the game. It's not worth it. I spent $20 on this game. I feel like I overpaid. Don't. It's not good. Go play the first one again. I don't know, there's gotta be better games. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you love this game? Did I just poop all over your heart? I'm sorry, but thank you for making it to the end of the video. Be sure to leave a comment, hit the like button if you like the video, subscribe to the channel so that you can watch me ruin all the other games that you like for some reason. And I will see you all with the next video.